to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila in Vietnam. Hello, Charlene.
Hello, I'm Shirley Navaja, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. Former United States diplomat and hostage negotiator Bill Richardson met Myanmar's junta chief, according to the military, as the country passed 9 months under a regime that has detained a U.S. journalist.
American Heather Mack, convicted as a pregnant teenager of helping to kill her mother at a luxury hotel in Bali, was deported Tuesday from Indonesia along with her now 6-year-old daughter.
And Indonesia, hard hit by the coronavirus pandemic, became the first country to approve the new vaccine for COVID-19 created by US-based Novavax.
Cebu. In line with the worldwide aid to humanity.
And Cebu province also benefited from the Iglesia Ni Cristo's Aid to Humanity launched last week.
Was also held.
First in our news, former United States diplomat and hostage negotiator Bill Richardson met Myanmar's junta chief on Tuesday, according to the military, as the country passed 9 months under a regime that has detained a U.S. journalist. Junta Chief Min Aung Hlaing received former UN Ambassador Bill Richardson, in the capital Naypyidaw, where they exchanged views and discussed COVID-19 vaccine assistance from the U.S. to Myanmar, a military-run news website said. Richardson is in Myanmar on a private humanitarian mission. His organization, the Richardson Center, said in a statement announcing his departure. The military website made no mention of American journalist Danny Fenster, who was detained in May and has since been charged with encouraging dissent against the military and unlawful association. He faces 6 years in jail if convicted on both charges. Richardson, a former governor of New Mexico, has negotiated the release of hostages and American servicemen in North Korea, Cuba, Iraq, and the Sudan, according to his center's website.
American Heather Mack, convicted as a pregnant teenager of helping to kill her mother at a luxury hotel in Bali, was deported Tuesday from Indonesia along with her now 6-year-old daughter, immigration officials said. Mack, 25, was flown back to the United States after being released last week from a Bali prison nearly 3 years early for good behavior. In a case dubbed the suitcase murder, Mack was handed a 10-year jail term in 2015, while her boyfriend, Tommy Schaefer, got 18 years for the murder of Chicago socialite Sheila Von Rees Mack on the holiday island of Bali. Schaefer, the father of Mack's child, beat the 62-year-old victim to death with a fruit bowl during an argument at the 5-star St. Regis resort. The couple then stuffed the woman's body into a suitcase and tried to flee with it in a taxi, but quickly abandoned the blood-soaked luggage. Mack, who was pregnant at that time of the crime, was found guilty on a lesser charge of assisting in the murder. Earlier, Mack's lawyer told AFP that she did not want her daughter to be deported and hounded by the U.S. media. However, the lawyer said Tuesday that before she left Bali, she said she was now happy to start a new life in the U.S. with her daughter. Since the pandemic began, Mack, now fluent in Indonesian and Balinese, had only video contact with her daughter, a prison official said earlier. The 2014 murder shook the usually sedate holiday island. The details of the grisly killing emerging during the closely followed trial. The court heard how Mack's badly beaten body was discovered in the taxi outside the Ritzy Hotel, where she had been staying with her daughter and Schaefer. The couple had fled to another part of Bali where police arrested them. Schaefer, who remains in prison, confessed to the killing during his trial but claimed he was defending himself during an argument with Mack, who was unhappy that her daughter was pregnant. Prosecutors alleged that Schaefer blindly hit Mack with the food bowl in a fit of rage after she hurled a racial slur at Schaefer, who is black. During the attack, Mack hid in a bathroom but later helped Schaefer stuff the body into a suitcase. And then the sentencing judge described the killing as sadistic.
The tail end of a frontal system may trigger flooding in major rivers in the Eastern Visayas region. That, according to the Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical, and Astronomical Services Administration, or PAGASA, warning this on Tuesday. In an advisory, PAGASA identified several rivers in 6 provinces that would likely be affected by the downpour, which is Sangkutan, Palo, Solano, Dagitan, Marabong, Kadakan, Bongkirogon, Salug, Pagbanagaran, Pagsanhan, and Binahaan in Leyte, and Katarman, Bugco, Pabuhan, Katubig, Palapag, Mano, and Gamay in northern Samar. Other rivers include Oras, Dolores, Ulot, Taft, Borongan, Suribao, Llorente, Balangiga, and Sulat in eastern Samar, Base, Silaga, Calbiga, and Jibatan in Samar, Bisay, Himbangan, and Pandan in southern Leyte, and all river systems in Biliran. People living in low-lying areas near these river systems have been advised to stay alert for possible flash floods. Those residing near mountain slopes have been told to watch out for signs of landslides. PAGASA said the weather system affects the Visayas and the northern section of Mindanao and may cause scattered light to occasionally moderate rains and thunderstorms. Now, the tail end of the frontal system, also called shear line, is the convergence of northeasterly and easterly winds that forms rain clouds.
President Rodrigo Duterte is expected to attend New Zealand's hosting of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, Leaders Week on November 12. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque made this announcement in a regular palace briefing on Tuesday. Duterte is expected to attend all APEC opening and closing ceremonies, the Global Economic Outlook, presentation by the International Monetary Fund, Recovering from COVID-19, Build Prosperity for All Our People and Future Generations, and the handover ng APEC chairing to Thailand. APEC is a regional economic forum established in 1989 to create greater prosperity for the people of the region by promoting balanced, inclusive, sustainable, innovative, and secure growth, and by accelerating regional economic integration, according to its official website. APEC's 21 member economies are Australia, Brunei Darussalam, Canada, Chile, People's Republic of China, Hong Kong, China, Indonesia, Japan, Republic of Korea, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Peru, the Philippines, the Russian Federation, Singapore, Chinese Taipei, Thailand, United States of America, and Vietnam. New Zealand will be the first economy to host an entirely virtual host year of APEC. In June, the New Zealand government announced it would make the move to a digital event to provide certainty to make the event happen.
Meanwhile, the ongoing United Nations Climate Change Conference 26, or COP26, is the last best hope of Earth in the face of human-induced climate change, that according to the Philippine Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr., as he joined urgent calls to finalize the Paris Agreement rule book. Take a look. Now, this is the world's last-ditch effort to save the planet. Let's get that Paris rule book done. Succeeding COPs will be fine-tuning solutions or accelerating them, Loksin said at the climate summit that kicked off in Glasgow, Scotland on October 31st. Loksin noted that countries with a greater capacity to absorb the brunt of hard solutions must take them and help those with less capacity. He also reiterated President Rodrigo Duterte's previous appeal to developed countries to fulfill their long-standing commitment to climate financing, technology transfer, and capacity building in the developing world.
World leaders meeting at COP26 in Glasgow issue a multi-billion-dollar pledge to protect forests. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that the pledge is the biggest collective commitment of public funds for forests and climate action in history. Take a look.
That the world is coming together around their effort, your effort, with at least $1.5 billion over the next 5 years to help protect the forests, peatlands, and precious ecosystems of Central Africa. And this is part of a new global forest finance pledge of over, wait for it, of over $12 billion, amounting to the biggest collective commitment of public funds for forest and climate action in history.
The United States will help the world deliver on our shared goal of halting natural forest loss and restoring at least an additional 200 million hectares of forest and other ecosystems by the year 2030. This plan is the first of its kind, taking a whole-of-government approach and working in our case with Congress to deploy up to $9 billion in U.S. funding through 2030 to conserve and restore our forests. Confident we can do this. All we need to do is summon the will.
Signatories include Brazil and Russia, which have been singled out for accelerating deforestation in their territories, as well as the United States, China, Australia, and France. President Joko Widodo of resource-blessed Indonesia said his own archipelago's rainforest, mangroves, seas, and peatlands were key to restricting climate change. In a UK government statement, he said that they are committed to protecting these critical carbon sinks and their natural capital for future generations. He also said we call on all countries to support sustainable development paths that strengthen the livelihoods of communities, especially indigenous women and smallholders.
Meanwhile, the White House said U.S. President Joe Biden and Indonesian President Joko Widodo called on the Myanmar military junta to release political prisoners. Meeting on the sidelines of the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow, Biden and Widodo also highlighted freedom of the seas in the Indo-Pacific region, the White House said, using language that typically refers to criticism of China's increasingly muscular presence. Now, according to the White House, they expressed concern about the coup in Burma and agreed the Burmese military must cease violence, release all political prisoners, and provide for a swift return to democracy. Biden expressed support for ASEAN's position on Myanmar, which last month boycotted a summit of the Southeast Asian regional grouping after its chief was banned from the virtual event. The White House also said Indonesia is next in line as president of the G20 group, and Biden expressed support for its leadership in the Indo-Pacific as the world's third largest democracy and a strong proponent of the international rules-based order. And the news continues here on Eagle News. ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Dito nyo lang unang maririnig. Breaking news.
Talagang napag-isipan ninyo, wag na pong tumakbo.
Si Mayor Sara ay tatakbo, I will seriously consider.
Pati meron mas maganda pang mechanism para matulungan natin yung ating mga super. Ito yung Pantawid Pasada Program.
Ano sa palagay ninyo? Suspindihin muna yung excise tax on fuel o kawalan naman ng 131.4 billion sa government revenues na pandemic response natin yan sa 2022.
Mga isyong siguradong tatatak sa inyong umaga.
So yan,
Better stories.
sabi nga mawalan ka na ng kuryente, huwag ka lang mawalan ng tubig.
Ako, I agree. Paano ka maglilinis? Paano ka maliligo? Doon talaga nag-uumpisa ang
Una,
sakit.
sige nga, pakwento nga dito sa talinong ang sinitong COVID-19 na to.
Una, walang utak yung COVID-19 na yan. Dapat mas mautak tayo.
Gaano karami po ba ang nadagdag sa ating populasyon na tulad ng inaasahan natin?
Ito ay mas mababa kaysa nung 2019.
Sila ang source ng pinag-uusapan ngayon. ASPN.
Bawal ang bata except for yung essential travel or for work, hindi ba?
Maaasahan ho ba na ating mga healthcare workers na bago po magtapos ang taon, yung kanilang mga benepisyo po ay maibibigay na po sa kanila?
Yung ibang mga opisyal, naroon pa rin sila at nakaupo pa rin sa PhilHealth. Have they been administratively charged?
May mga kaso na ito.
Sa DICT, all the LGUs, as long as nagpabakuna ka, binibigay nila yung record na yon sa DICT.
Ano sa palagay nyo? Kasama sina Ali Soto at Pat Pidaza.
Ibig sabihin po, ang pamahalaan ay hindi maaring makialam.
Then gusto mo parang may emergency intervention. Ang gobyerno pwede humimasok. Talaga bang totoo, isasarado muna ang Dolomite Beach?
Yes, sarado na po siya until November 3. We're trying to look at it kung paano naman namin kakasuhan din pabalik itong kusyana na ito.
Salamat po sa inyo, sa inyong suporta sa PNP at para sa ating mga pulisan.
Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga. Simulcast sa Net25.
Kasi pag kumuhay ka ng ganyan, kumakalembang yung mga dito mo.
DZEC 1062 Mega Manila. Eagle FM 95.5. Facebook at YouTube.
Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases is studying the possibility of lifting the current policy on the use of face shields in the country, Malacanang said on Tuesday. In an online briefing, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said the significant drop in the COVID-19 cases might persuade the IATF EID to withdraw the requirement of wearing a face shield on top of a face mask. Let's listen.
Umababa ang numero, marami ng kumbaga nagsasabi sa IATF na baka dapat itigil ng pagkasuot ng face shields. Pero wala pa pong desisyon na susuot pa rin po tayo ng face shields. Linilinaw ko lang po, bagamat tumadaming sumusuporta doon sa hindi na paggamit ng face shields dahil umababa ang numero, sa ngayon po isuot pa rin po natin ang face shields.
Double skin iba. Yung important na dyan is the eye protection. Alam rin kasi natin na pwedeng pumasok ang COVID through your eyes and even yung tears natin, kung may COVID kayo, pwede magkaroon ng COVID. So, aside from the double layer of protection, yung eye protection is also kind of important. And kaya nga rin nakakalusot yung iba kahit naka-double mask sila dahil pwede pa rin pumasok yung virus sa mata.
Duterte, in June this year, ordered the public to wear face shields only in hospitals, but immediately decided to keep the IATF's original policy following the presence of the more infectious Delta variant. He, however, decided in September this year to just limit the use of face shields in the so-called 3Cs, which refers to closed and crowded spaces and close contact.
In other pandemic news, Indonesia, hard hit by the coronavirus pandemic, became the first country to approve the new vaccine for COVID-19 created by US-based Novavax. The company announced on Monday. Take a look. The approval will give Indonesia, which has strained to obtain adequate supplies of coronavirus vaccine for its 270 million people, first access to the vaccine, which will be manufactured in India under the brand Covavax. The vaccine uses a different technology than those which already have gained general approval and circulated around the world. Unlike the mRNA products from BioNTech, Pfizer, Moderna, and CureVac, Novavax's two-jab vaccine relies on a more traditional technique, using proteins to carry fragments of the coronavirus rendered harmless to produce an immune reaction. In addition, the vaccine can be held at higher temperatures than others, 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, making its transportation and storage easier, especially in developing countries.
And here in Vietnam, the Ministry of Health has just issued a document asking municipal and provincial authorities to review their needs for COVID-19 vaccines, including plan for third and fourth booster shots in 2022. According to the document, the Health Ministry wants localities to take stock of the vaccination situation in their jurisdictions, to state their demands for vaccines for people aged 18 and above. So it could devise a plan for vaccine allocation in November and December. The number of children in the three age brackets, 3 to 11 years old, 12 to 15 years old, 16 to 17 years old, must also be submitted to the Health Ministry. Vietnam currently uses various COVID-19 vaccines for adults, but only approves Pfizer or BioNTech and Moderna vaccines for children. And currently, those 16 to 17 years old are prioritized. The Health Ministry said localities also need to build a plan for vaccination in 2022 for children from 3 years old and above and adults, including plans for third and fourth booster shots for people who have already received the full 2 doses.
Meanwhile, the government expects the average daily vaccination rate will increase after the long weekend with more COVID-19 jabs coming in. A health official said Tuesday the country would need to double its efforts to reach its daily million vaccination target and the goal to fully vaccinate 50% of the target population by December. Again, let's listen in.
500 jobs per day. Although alam naman natin noong October 31, November 1, medyo nag-slow down. So mga 100 to 200. But the average daily job for the past, naka 3.5 million tayo ng 1 week. The past week. Ang gusto nating itaas sa Yusek Rocky ay sa 5 million sana per week if we can strive for 1 million per day. Natin all hands on deck, kailangan tulong-tulong tayo lahat para ma-meet po yung 1 million. Nasa 500, ibig sabihin magdo-double efforts tayo. Kasama na po yung mga pagbakuna ng mga pediatric age groups. So sana makainganyo din ito para yung ibang hindi pa nababakunahan ay magpabakuna na rin.
The daily jabs administered slowed down a bit to 459,876 doses during the last 7 days. That included the weekend leading to November 1. As more vaccines arrived, including the state-procured 2.7 million doses of Sputnik V on Tuesday afternoon. The government is eyeing to inject between 1 and 1.5 million doses every day beginning next week. Overall, the Philippines has received 108,912,460 doses of COVID-19 vaccines, both procured and donated.
About 60.5% of the Brunei population is fully vaccinated against COVID-19 as the country inches closer to the gradual reopening of the economy. A total of 260,338 people have completed their two-shot regimen, while 82.2% of the population has received at least one vaccine dose, according to figures from the Ministry of Health on Tuesday. The proportion of fully jabbed residents was expected to hit 70% by the end of this month. In its pandemic exit plan unveiled last week, the government set its sights on loosening some COVID-19 restrictions when the double-dose vaccination rate reaches 70% and the healthcare system is not under strain. The Health Ministry also plans to pause the inoculation of adults at the indoor stadium for 2 weeks in November to accommodate the vaccine rollout for teenagers, as it seeks to achieve the 80% vaccination target by year's end. And the CNN Focus will be right back.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba, sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Hi, I'm Alex Calleja, isang podcaster, YouTuber, writer, director, at isang stand-up comedian for more than 12 years. Ang sarap maging komedyante sa Pilipinas, no? Dahil paborito ng mga Pinoy pagsaluhan ang mga nakakatawang eksena sa paligid. Pero dahil sa pandemic, ang kulitan naging online na lang. Naranasan mo na ba to? Ginising ka ng nanay mo para tanungin lang kung anong oras ka gigisingin. Pero masaya talaga pag sabay-sabay tayong nagtatawanan sa mga videos na gaya nito. Ito pa. Ito pa. At ito pa. Kaya naman, heto na ang funniest Snackable Videos. Ang natatanging show na bubusugin ang buong sambenan sa katatawanan. Ito ang bagong tambayan ng buong pamilya at barkada. Mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes nyo kami makakasama tuwing 4:30 p.m. Dito lang sa Net25. Dito, mapapanood natin ang best comedy videos na hinanap pa namin sa kasuluk-sulukan ng internet. So ano bang hinihintay nyo? Join na sa pinakabago at pinakamasayang afternoon habit ng tawanan at kulitan, ang funniest Snackable Videos!
Welcome back. The country's financial system remains strong in the first half of the year. Amid the pandemic, and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas has lined up several reforms to ensure the sector's continued resilience. In a report released on Tuesday, the central bank identified these reforms as the transfer of significant ownership in banks and non-bank financial institutions with a quasi-banking license or QBS, climate change, environmental and social risks, digital banking operations, open finance framework, fraud management, and customer due diligence. Regarding the transfer of significant ownership, the report said the central bank will issue prudential requirements on the transfer in line with the regulations under Section 25A of the amended new Central Bank Act. On the policy related to climate change, the BSP is set to finalize Phase 2 of its regulations on sustainable finance framework. BSP's Policymaking Monetary Board, or MB, approved the Sustainable Finance Policy Framework in March of 2020, and this sets out expectations on the integration of sustainability principles in the corporate governance and risk management frameworks of banks. On fraud management, the report cited the risk or the rise in cyber threat attracts, thus, supervised financial institutions are expected to adopt more robust systems to protect their data and systems and ensure delivery of uninterrupted services. Overall, the report said the domestic financial system remains sound and stable despite the challenges posed by the pandemic and other factors.
The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, officials will be conducting a series of discussions with its counterparts from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on the latter's commitment to pay the more than $4 billion worth of salaries and benefits of some 9,000 displaced overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, according to Overseas Workers Welfare Administration Chief Hans Leo Kapda. Let's take a look.
Well, kung maalala ninyo, Secmart, ito yung mga na-stranded noon. Sila ay nawalan ng trabaho. Nagsara yung dalawang buhalang construction company nila sa Saudi. May mga higit kumulang mga 12,000 ang at nung panahon na yon ay ng Saudi and Philippine governments sa pinangungunan ng Secretary Bell yun noong mga panahon na yun, kung naalala ninyo, ay maraming ang sahing pauwi ang dinibre by no less than ng hari ng sayang higit kumula sa gitna ng 12,000 hanggang 15,000 noong ngayon, noong 2016-2017. At nabigyan sila ng tulong, ayuda ng OWA na halos pumapalo na ng 1 billion pesos in terms of livelihood, financial assistance, at meron pang mga cash outs. So, ang nangyari ay hindi pa rin sila nabayaran ng service benefits. But si Secretary Bell, batay nga sa anunsyo niya noong linggo, nagkaroon ng pagpupulong last week sa Dubai between Secretary and yung Saudi Labor Minister. Yun nga, nagkaroon na ng pag-asa dahil sabi ng Saudi Labor Minister ay pupunta siya sa mabibigyan na ng nakabinbin na mga sahod at benefits ng mga OFW sa at least mga dalawang dampuhalang construction companies na nagsara at hinara ng mga benepisyo ng mga OFWs. Well, yun yung kaparaanan ay kailangan pa nating malaman ng husto sa Saudi side kung ano magiging kaparaanan ng distribution. At ito nga yung naban na mamarapatin lang ay magkakaroon pa ng mga pagpupulong. Mayroong pang napag-usapan na meetings patungkol dito. Mabilinaw itong magandang balita na ito.
Meanwhile, Malaysia stocks fell on Monday as the government announced a one-off windfall tax on companies to raise revenue for the coming year. The benchmark FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI index fell around 2.2% and was among the worst performing stock markets across the Asia Pacific. Malaysian Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz on Friday presented the government's budget for 2022, which includes the largest ever spending plan worth over 332 billion ringgit or $80 billion to jumpstart an economy weighed down by the COVID-19 pandemic. Zafrul announced several measures to raise government revenue, including increasing the tax rate on corporate income of more than 100 million ringgit to 33% from 24% in 2022.
ASEAN circular economy. How can Southeast Asia grow sustainably? Here's a special remarks by Mack's Foreman, Secretary General Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, at the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. Take a look.
The OECD, we recently put forward a proposal to G20 member countries to help facilitate an ambitious but internationally more coherent, globally better coordinated approach to the pricing of carbon emissions. And as Indonesia takes on the G20 presidency, we very much look forward to engaging with Indonesia, is to help ensure more ambitious, cost-effective action on climate change can be pursued in a way that doesn't cause trade distortions or carbon leakage. In recent increases in climate commitments from Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, the Philippines and others are of course very welcome. OECD research shows that a significant proportion of greenhouse gas emissions come from materials production, particularly in a region such as yours. So your leadership in this field is key. Second, the energy sector is critical to our net zero efforts. Southeast Asia will be the center of global energy demand in the decades to come. You have a remarkable opportunity to address the triple goals of addressing energy poverty, national regional energy security, and indeed sustainable development by investing in renewables and energy efficiency, and by providing targeted support for poor energy consumers rather than pursuing the continued use of fossil fuel subsidies. When it comes to the transition to net zero carbon emissions, we will need both public and private efforts. Third, we need policies and regulatory frameworks which incentivize green investment and innovation. Because beyond governments, businesses can and must contribute by setting their own net zero targets, transforming their value chain emissions, focusing on climate-friendly investments and supporting innovation. Greening supply chains will be a prerequisite for attracting quality foreign direct investment. Financial markets must be a part of the solution to climate change. It is important to advance efforts in the region to adopt sustainable finance practices, which will create a finance ecosystem that will provide adequate capital for the low carbon transition. We need to encourage and support local businesses. ASEAN countries are attractive destinations for investment. If you continue to put in place transparent and predictable regulatory frameworks, you should be able to attract a significant amount of the growing flow of international finance going towards sustainable investment in developing countries. The key message here is continue to design clear, integrated regulatory frameworks that offer stability and certainty for international investors. Our forthcoming economic outlook for Southeast Asia, China and India assesses various market-based options such as social bonds and green bonds, highlighting the need to strengthen the region's market infrastructure and facilitating issuance by small firms.
And finally, in our news, Cebu province benefited from the Iglesia Ni Cristo's worldwide aid to humanity launched last week. Here's Chloe Pacheco for the report.
Aid to humanity. The Church of Christ conducted a successful aid to humanity last October 28, Thursday, at the municipality of Moro, an island of hope for the beautiful island of Camotes, Cebu. In line with the worldwide aid to humanity as part of the birthday celebration of the INC Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, a turnover ceremony was also held in place, headed by the Ecclesiastical District Minister of Cebu City, Cebu, Brother James B. Silva.
and Mayor Edgar G. Rama of the municipality of Poro, being the recipient of the goodie bags assisted by the town's council. The outreach event that included 5,000 packs of rice for the whole island was taking place in Poro Gymnasium, which were then turned over to all the towns in Camotes, down to every barangays, and were slowly distributed to each household. Although the island of Camotes is known for its clean and beautiful seawater in Cebu, the poverty cannot be unseen on the residents' faces. Many are poor, hungry, and have no source of daily necessities. In addition, the frequent rains also affected their fishing livelihood. Camotes is divided into one islet and two islands. One of them is Poro Island, located in the northernmost part of Cebu. Camotes is 259 kilometers and 2 hours away from the ecclesiastical district of Cebu City, accessible by ferry boats or fast crafts. The members of the Church of Christ disregarded the bad weather, and that somehow delayed their trip just to happen. Even as far north as Camotes Island, the Church of Christ member participated in this worldwide effort in distributing the goodie bags to the families and individuals nearby, making sure that the health protocols are still observed. In times of calamities and amid the COVID-19 crisis, the INC intensified holding such aid to humanity programs to reach out to more communities, including the poor, the homeless, and the elderly. INC ministers emphasized that the Church has been conducting such outreach activities in accordance with the biblical teachings to love their fellow men and to extend help to those in need, wherever they may be. Not only they provide goods, but they also provide opportunities like eco-farming worldwide to help poverty. It is a continuing activity of the Church of Christ, which was further expanded around the world, under the leadership of INC Executive Minister Brother Eduardo V. Manalo. One of the residents named Melialuz Rosauro expressed how grateful she is, as they should be the one to give presents to the Executive Minister who is celebrating his birthday, but instead, they are the ones receiving gifts from him. Klaus Mohr, a German resident, also gave his warm greetings to Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, expressing how good he is or showing his care with humanity by conducting such activities. The successful outreach event left smiles on each faces as they headed back home with their hearts full. The barangay officials and members, especially Mayor Rama, also expressed their astonishment and gratitude as it was the first time such an event have taken place in the island. It shows that the extensive work of God remains existent and evident.
Reporting from Cebu, Philippines, this is Chloe Pacheco, live with the special coverage of the worldwide aid to humanity of the Church of Christ. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Chloe. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for keeping me company as always. Charlene.
You're most welcome, Alma. And that's the latest news in the ASEAN region. Thank you for joining us here today in ASEAN in Focus. This is Charlene Navaja from the Vietnam Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
We'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Napapansin ba ninyo, lumiliwanag ang mundo pag magkasama tayo? Life is so much sweeter, everything feels better pag tayong lahat ay together. Let's have fun together, let's play together, kumain, magluto, matuto together, tawanan together, hawak kamay together, we'll be there for each other, we're stronger together. Kaya tara na